So we also had issues behind the scenes with crew. Luke was gonna run camera, but was unavailable at the time for the shoot.
Originally, I was actually supposed to be the director of photography. I had to very last minute tap out, essentially. I remember texting Billy and Colin like this long text. I can't lie, I had so much anxiety when I was texting you guys that because I felt so bad. It was very nice that you guys were very cool about it and they ended up finding someone else.
And so we brought in Owen, who I worked with before on some short films in competitions that I competed in. So for that... I'm not even gonna pick it up. You can do jump cuts on YouTube. It's fine, this isn't a short film. I had worked with him before, and so I knew that he could help us achieve, the vision that I had in mind. So he came on as camera operator for this film.
I'm gonna be honest, we ran into problems on that first day. We were really pressed for time when we were setting up lights and angles. It was just a little more rushed than I would have liked.
Day of for lighting, we had to focus a lot on that because some of our films in the past we hadn't, and so I really wanted to focus on that because it's something that I'm passionate about. That took up a lot of time on set. A lot of times it's running through camera movements while setting up the lights at the same time. Is why it's important to have people like Grips, Alex.
All right, don't mess with the Don. Yeah, scene 2, shot 3, take 1.
Was my friend since grade school, and he was a huge help on that set, just being able to set up lights. Because I'm an actor, I had to be in front of the camera a lot. I had my assistant director, Billy. He was a huge help in just working with the camera.
Being an assistant director, I kind of had to step up a bit and figure out, make sure everything was working the way he envisioned. One in particular, when he was on the ground, I had to kind of frame the shot and then kind of keep showing the monitor for him. Even when we were shooting Soren's coverage, he had to give Soren an eye line, and he was still on the ground, so I had to kind of help Soren and guide what Colin was looking for and making sure we got all of it done.
It was just a game of trust, and luckily, I trust him.
Oh.
So obviously with a lot of last minute changes and additions to the cast and crew, that meant there was a lot of things that should have been discussed beforehand that had to be discussed day of on the first day of shooting. One of the big things was we were shooting in a basement at night. We had to light the scene. The problem was
my whole job was producing. On our first day of shooting, I got really tested with that.
We set up lights. We had them at full power. We realized it was just starting to look like a sitcom wedding. We opened up the iris and all that jazz. The scene was not getting lit.
It just wasn't showing up on camera.
We had to figure out the problem.
I immediately shoot into producer mode and run outside and start calling everyone I can. I texted Luke, but I think you were doing something, so I couldn't get a hold of him. And I called another filmmaking friend of ours. Do you have any cameras available that we could pull today or tomorrow? And he said he might have one, so then he said he had to call it for me to call his business partner. He was saying he was fine with it, but he wouldn't be able to get it to us till tomorrow, so that would have meant we would have lost the day of filming, but we would at least have a camera.
So he was outside on a call. I was inside trying to work on this camera that we do have. I search up online, it says the camera that we're using is great in low light. I'm looking at our settings, our exposure is, in terms of the physical camera side of boosting exposure, we had done everything.
And as I'm doing all these calls, I look and I see Colin just standing outside looking at me like he just threw up and he wanted to tell his mom.
It wasn't until
I think I waved him away to finish the call, and I came back inside and Colin just said, I fixed it. I said, oh.
I looked at the ISO that I had realized that we were at 320 ISO, I believe.
So I had to go back outside and make all those phone calls again saying, we don't need the camera. It was a mess. It was a nightmare.
Got done though.
Yeah.
It's fine. I've looked into this actually after the fact. A lot of sources say to stay below 400. When you raise the camera exposure with ISO, it gets grainy because you're artificially enhancing the amount of light that's going into the sensor. And so the problem with that is we were not shooting under ideal shooting conditions. We did not have super powerful lights. It was just a miscommunication on the day of about what the ISO needs to be at, especially for something like a short film. But it did mean that we lost a couple hours on the first day. And you know what? I'll discuss flaws with the film if it's on like our end. That meant that we rushed a little bit with the lighting on that day.
I think there were some like really good moments stemming from set problems. Like again, with no gimbal, we had to figure out other ways to get shots. And so instead of the gimbal shot that was originally, I think like supposed to go around everyone.
No,
and stuff
that
like
was
that,
so.
or-
When we were planning that, Cullen had this huge shot that was like it goes through a table, and we would have had to move the table, and move it back before the camera got to a certain point.
That's cool.
But we couldn't with this kind of like setup here. So as I said before, I was also assistant director for the project, and with that really came to understanding Cullen's vision and what he wanted to do, and he had a couple inspirations for film, so I decided to watch those. And when we were doing the shot in the bar, when the Don first calls, in the storyboard, it was around a round table. And he had this whole shot in mind that he didn't know how we would do. Looking at it, I figured out how we would be able to achieve the shot. But when we showed up on the day, we saw that the round tables that we had available were just too small to fit our entire cast. So we had to sit them at the bar. So from that, we had to just kind of scrap the shot, but we still needed the idea of the shot is very important. So
But what ended up happening was we set the camera up on a tripod, put it on a towel.
Wasn't it like a?
I have
What
a
was
a
it?
monopod-ish.
Oh,
like,
it-
for
okay, it was something like
so we
that.
put it like on a towel and just me
Yeah,
and you
and we
fucking
just
dragged
dragged
the
it
whole
across while we instructed the actors to kind of push themselves in so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
closed
yeah,
the
yeah.
frame, which is it just ended up looking so good.
thing. Yeah, no, that's.
I was like, I was really happy with that shot.
Yeah.
I was
And then you pick it up and you move it
oh,
over there. And
so cool. That's the part I wish we had a gimbal for to make that a little bit smoother.
No,
but
yeah.
I think it looked
Well,
good.
you know,
It's a- no,
it's the
it's-
character's emotional state.
Yeah.
You know, he,
Right.
As long
he's
as
a little
it seems intentional.
razzle dazzle. You know.
Yeah.
when we were shooting and trying to figure out what we could do, we had a couple people mention ideas about just cutting to the phone and just cutting it all around. I had to fight for calling. Like, this is the big shot. This is the Don calling. We need this to be a huge deal. So knowing that it was heavily inspired by Scorsese and those kinds of films, I immediately thought of Casino, and I thought of how he used the camera to push through like the casino. So I thought of that, and I figured if we just put the camera at the end of the bar and just push in and then picked it up and went with Cullen, that we could do that. And Cullen liked the shot. We worked it out. I think we did 15 takes.
A lot of
We did a
takes.
lot of takes of it. It was something that we just all had to adapt and really figure out on the day of how the hell do we do this without just kind of winging it, basically.
So looking back at those shots, you know, and it was our first day finding our footing with the crew and everything like that. It wasn't exactly what I had wanted, but I remember that second day. It's our actor Soren who played Quickie. He's in the back seat in the shadows, and then he chokes out Nick, decides not to, and leans into the light as he makes that decision. And I was giddy like a little schoolgirl. I was so happy.
But you know that was at a water tower, which we were able to shoot at for a few days.
So another thing that you have to be careful of when shooting is locations. We had reached out to a community theater that I had worked with and that Soren, our Quickie, had worked with before, and they let us shoot on that location all day, which was really great. If you're worried about a location, it doesn't hurt to ask. Sometimes you can get it for free. The problem is the final scene. There are guns in the film, in the final scene. We had to be a little cautious with that. You know, we couldn't just have the guns out and around. We didn't want the cops called on us.
Why?
You know, for reasons. We shot at nighttime by this water tower, which there was a driveway for cars to go through, people walking by there all the time, and the water tower itself was gated off. I was under the impression that we were shooting on public property.
On our last day of filming, it was We were just at the goal line. We were rehearsing. I think we wanted to start shooting at sundown, which was at like 7 o'clock, or no, 8 o'clock. While we were shooting at this water tower location, I made sure to have safety meetings. We never really had safety meetings because we never really needed it, because we've never had like a gun or even like action really in our films outside in public. When we were rehearsing for the day, it was around like 6:30. Thankfully we didn't have the guns out, but
Unfortunately, we had the cops called on us. Yeah, we were just in rehearsal phase, and all of a sudden, we see this car come up, and we see it's a cop, and we go, oh! And so we were in a mad dash, to make sure that we didn't have guns out at the moment. But luckily we hadn't started filming that day. It was still bright out, and it was a night shoot. So I had to talk to the cop, explain what was happening.
it turns out it was private property, which said that nowhere.
They probably would have at least held us at gunpoint.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have shot.
It's just so ironic that it was, for one, the last day, and this ended up in an interesting last day. I'll get into that
Oh my
in a second.
gosh, yeah.
But like, for the entirety of that shoot, apparently there was this one like guy that saw us shooting, and he came over to us at the beginning of the shoot on the second day because he was like just wondering what we were doing. Do you remember?
Right.
He was like,
I
his
do.
wife was talking about it.
Right,
and
yes,
He's like,
I do
yeah. So
remember.
my wife was gonna call the police. But I said, wait a second, let me go see
yeah, I
what
do
they're
remember
doing.
that.
And so he walked down. I was like, yeah, we're shooting a film. He's like, guys, that's freaking awesome. Epic. And apparently, other people are asking him what we were even doing. And he just explained it, and he kind of single-handedly held off having anyone call the police for a few days, which was great, until the water company called them. And, lo and behold, all that happened.
That was my main priority, was to make sure I didn't get arrested. So,
Good goal right there.
yeah,
So once the cops showed up, I immediately figured out, made sure that the guns were not seen or out or anything like that. And then my instinct reaction was, I need to reason with this man so he could just let us continue filming, because we were about an hour from shooting and we could shoot pretty quickly.
I was the director. I had to take the fall for that, so I had to talk with him. I had to give him my ID. He was very nice. He talked with us and was like, hey, yeah, the problem is there are cameras, and somebody thought some kids were like trying to break into the water tower place that was fenced off. And he was like, I understand it's open and things like that, but it is private property. But he did not let us stay, even though we asked so nicely.
So we had to then figure out what to do. And he sat and watched us as we were packing up and figuring out what to do, which added so much more pressure.
We had to shoot the rest of the final scene. This was our last day, by the way. So we didn't have any more days to work this out. We had to shoot the big emotional scene where Tony has the gun to my head. We had to shoot me getting out of the car. And we had to shoot all this stuff, but not at the same location that we shot the rest of that same exact scene. We let the cast and crew go to my house because it was in that area.
We had some of our crew back at the house already, and then we sent the rest of our crew. I had to call our sound guy, Eddie, who, when I told him the cops showed up, he thought I was lying. I've never been more serious in my life telling him the cops showed up, and he still did not believe me. So I think that's more on Eddie than on me.
Fuck you, Ed.
Yeah, just throw Eddie under the bus for no reason. So we let them all go, and me and Billy, we had to walk back and figure out a plan to shoot the rest of the film.
As we were walking, we were just trying to figure out what we could do, where we can go.
Luckily, there was a park that I knew of that had grass and a place where we could put a car. The problem was, we had guns in a public park at night, and 2, it was gonna close in like a half an hour.
I didn't know that.
We contacted the rest of the cast and crew, and we're like, hey. Oh. But we called the cast and crew, and we're like, hey, everybody, we gotta get ready to just book it down to the park because it was right down the road from me. And so since we only had that 30-minute window to work in, what we needed was the shot of me getting out of the car. because we needed me getting out of the car to flow into the next scene. We got that scene very last minute. We got there and we had to dip immediately. Luckily, all we needed, it was very dark. It was a very dark scene. The background basically pitch black. The good thing for us is that it was pitch black, because that meant all we needed was grass.
And I remembered Eddie having this kind of big backyard and not really many lights back there, so it was pitch black.
Eddie, thank you for letting us film at your house. We had it as dark as possible. We had to set up a light to mimic the headlights because we couldn't have the car in the backyard. And so we got the scene of Tony with the gun to my head and that entire exchange all in one take, which was really great because we were really worried.
We were kind of freaking out because this was our last day of filming. We had no more shooting days, so it all had to get done tonight. So thankfully we had a very understanding cast and crew who were just with us, ready with us to the end, ready to just get it done and get it going.
And we actually finished ahead of schedule somehow. So yeah, it was like 20 minutes early.
Was it? I
Yeah.
feel like it was like all in the dot we finished.
No,
Shit.
because we were kind of lollygagging around at that point. We were like, oh my gosh, did we finish that early despite all that?
So we're just that damn good.
Listen, I didn't want to say it. Hopefully you didn't notice, and if you notice now, don't tell anybody. Unless it's because you shared this video.
Dude, shut the fuck up.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more short films.